Hey everybody, it's time. It is 11 o'clock my time, noon mountain time. That's when we stream. Now, I want to start by saying that we have two systems that we use. One of them is our what I'm calling our old system to do this streaming. It's got a really slight delay. You're going to see that right now. We have a new system where we fix that, but we had some technical difficulties with that. So there's going to be a little bit of a delay in the audio. I want to say stay with us. The content we have here is going to be awesome. So just thank you for your patience. So welcome to everything you want to know about layout, but we're afraid to ask. It's actually called Work Smarter, not harder. And I've got my co-host with me, as always, Mr. Donovan. Can you say hello?
Hey, welcome to Friday Live, everybody. We are excited to be here with everybody, and there is a lot of people. It seems that are hyped up about this topic, and so I'm sure there's a lot of interest in everything that you're going to be going over today.
Okay, good. Here, I'm going to see, hang on, I'm going to change one of my windows. I don't need this one up, Donovan, for you. You tell me really quick. If I hide that one, you can still see what I'm doing, right? That's good for you?
I can. You're
Okay,
good to go. Yep.
let's do that then. So, really quick introduction before I just get into it is I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing today because it's layout focused. So what that means is that we're going to be spending some time in SketchUp, but we're going to be spending a lot of time in layout, and we're going to go back and forth between the two because as much as I love live modeling, as much as I love rendering in V-Ray, like some of the stuff we did last a few weeks ago with the Iron Man house, I also love the fact that layout is this, I don't want to call it a hidden gem, but it comes as a separate app. And I think there's a lot of people that because it's a separate app, that they sort of treat it a little bit differently. Like if you come from a CAD background, you have model space and paper space. And so that's one part of the same app. So it's really sort of, it's a, I wouldn't say, I don't want to say intuitive because SketchUp and layout is an intuitive process, but you think of it as the same app. Well, people treat layout and SketchUp as kind of separate apps a little bit because they come separately. But to me, it's really a seamless process. And what we want to do today is look at the templating and the automation process. So what can we do in SketchUp to set up, knowing that we're going to go to layout? And what can we do in layout, knowing that we have a preset model so that we can basically auto-populate some stuff so that as soon as we basically not making our time in layout more efficient, more enjoyable, and more repeatable. So whatever we do in a document standpoint, we can just basically say, I'm going to do this again. All this hard work that I put into creating the template, it's going to pay off, pay huge dividends down the road. So with that, before I just dive right into it, Donovan, anything you want to say about layout? Any housekeeping items or announcements you want to? I know everyone's trickling in. I want to make sure we say hi to everybody. Where's everyone coming in from?
Like a lot of people, I'm excited to learn more about layout because I come from the maker DIY space. And so layout for me has been almost used exclusively for coming up with woodworking plans and building plans and whatnot. And so it's going to be exciting to see the capabilities of layout beyond that. In terms of our audience, we, again, like it is every week, we have a very diverse, very worldwide audience. We've got people coming to us from Vancouver, from New Jersey, from Rome, from Colorado, from Wisconsin. Got quite a few saying things like, as a middle school teacher that uses SketchUp, an online demo like this is great. So we're all excited, Eric. We're ready to get into this. This is going to be awesome.
Great. This is going to be really, really good. I've got some good stuff to share. And more than that is that if you don't use layout, if you use layout exclusively every day, you probably know more than I do, because to be honest with you, like I'm not doing construction documentation. I'm not doing, fabrication sets or costing sets on a regular basis. So some of the things that I'm sharing are things that I think are helpful, things that how I would use it. But then again, I'm just one person. So this is why it's great to have a huge community behind us and watching, because we're going to learn, I'll learn something from you all today as well. So definitely pipe in with your comments. We have started putting the comments on the screen, but because we pivoted to our old system today, we won't have that today. So definitely keep your comments coming if you're coming from LinkedIn or if you're coming from Facebook. I almost said FaceTube or YouTube, where most people are watching from. Definitely get those comments in. They're still gonna, it's still important for us. We'll look at that. We'll go back and review it. We'll get that feedback from you, but we just won't sort of display them all in real time today. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and just get into it. So with layout, we can either start in layout or we can start in SketchUp. And I kind of thought about starting just briefly in SketchUp because what exactly it is, and maybe I should pick a different picture. I don't know. I like bright colors. So I had this kind of as my backdrop. But for those of you that were with us about a month ago, I did a interiors live model. And so this is sort of was the result of that. This is also the same model that we use on our campus course. So if you've taken that, you'll also be familiar with this. Now, this is a great model because it's got just enough information, it's light enough, and it's easy enough to work with, and it's already set up. So in this case, I'm going to use something that's already built. We're going to do some tweaks to it as needed, and then we're going to sort of set that up for documentation as if we're either getting a costing set or we're getting, it's part of a proposal package or whatever it is that we want to do. So a couple of different views here, just kind of walking you through. I did set up in this drawing, in this model, I do have a few scenes set up. It's just kind of a standard scene. I've got an elevation set up. So you can see I've got a hidden line style because I like sort of the CAD look for this. I've got a plan view already set up. So this is using section cuts. So now because I want to use most of our time in layout, I'm not going to go into too much detail about, setting up using sections and stuff. But I will talk about a few things that I learned recently in this process about how sections, scenes, and styles actually all work together to create the look that you're looking for. So Donovan, stop me with comments. As always, if somebody has something, an input or something they want to share, just interrupt me and I'll pause for a second. We'll get that, make sure everyone hears that feedback.
Yep, we got more people hailing from all over the world. We've got Romania, Uganda, Connecticut, Poland, Chesterfield, Nottingham, Costa Rica. I'm going to pronounce this wrong, probably Leicester. Leicester?
Yeah, that's in England, right? It's in the UK.
Yeah, that would be my guess. A lot of people from the UK, California, from India, Brazil, Canada, Georgia. Did get one comment from YouTube. K Spring says, I have been using layout for CDs for both residential and commercial for years. CD, I'm assuming, is a acronym for construction
document.
Design?
Construction document.
Okay, there we go.
So,
yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk I'll talk a little bit about why I maybe set up this model, but I really didn't set this model up particularly for layout because I wanted to do some things with you. So let's just pause here. I'm just going to pause here and say that this is what we're working with, and it's pretty straightforward. Set up just a few scenes, and we're going to make some modifications as we need. But again, nothing fancy, nothing hidden, no tricks, nothing unusual as far as what I'm asking or what I'm expecting our users to be able to do here. So there's two ways we can go to layout. We can open layout, which I'm just going to open it here. Give me a second while it loads. It's going to ask me, when we open layout, it's going to give you these options here. You can, we can do templates, which is what we're going to be talking, which is a big part of what we're going to be doing today, is creating our own. Or what we could do is, I'm going to show you the second way to do it. We can start from scratch, just a blank file, in which case we're going to build our own. Or if I wanted to, if I knew that I was ready to go and I already had a template set up, I could, of course, come over here and say send to layout. And then what it's going to do, it's going to take this model and just place it in. And that doesn't, it's kind of fun to do that, but it doesn't really help you too much because it only just, all it does is link the model. So you could start in layout and just drop the model in. So it takes about as much time. So whichever way you want to get your model to layout, totally up to you. So layout. Here we are in layout. I'm going to start with a completely blank file. And here's why, because I want to build a template together fairly quickly. And I want to talk a little bit about why I'm doing the things I'm doing. I know this doesn't sound super exciting to build a layout template, but there is some really cool features that we're going to cover. So definitely we're going to get into, I say the weeds, but not in a bad way. I say it in a good way. The weeds in this case is going to be, is cool. So I'm going to start with a tabloid landscape. So that's 11 by 17 for those that don't know tabloid. So if you're metric, you may be used to something like an A3 would be the closest. Um, and then from here, this is where we get to sort of make a decision. I've literally started with an absolute blank file. Now, just for comparison, I want to show you if you didn't start from a blank file, if you wanted to start, LayOut has these great title blocks already set up for you. So in this case, if I wanted to, I'm just going to give you an example. If you're kind of new to LayOut, like here's an example. You can see that it's already got some layers set up. It's already got some pages set up, and it's already got some text, including some auto text set up. So that's cool because you're not just getting the text and graphics as part of your template, you're also getting all of your settings. So units, dimension style, shape style, pages, all that stuff is going to be preset for you. So I'm going to pop out of that one and we're going to start over from scratch. Now, we're talking about optimization and efficiency in LayOut. Now, the big thing a lot of people say that LayOut slows them down is vector versus raster. And we're going to touch on that in a second, but I'm thinking more about when I say optimization, not so much the rendering mode of your model, but it's going to be an approach to like, what are we automating and what are we doing? The first thing I want to point out for people that are not aware of this, in SketchUp, we have keyboard shortcuts and LayOut does as well. So it's some of the things that I think that if I'm not using LayOut every day, I'm not really thinking about it. And one of them is what we're going to go back and forth into a bunch. For those that know LayOut, you already know that you're going to be going into document setup. That's your page settings. That's like your paper settings. So it's not your preferences that I'm in right now. It's your page settings. And I've already assigned a keyboard shortcut, which is Shift D for that one. And I'll show you why, because I'm going to be popping in, here's my document setup. I just use my keyboard shortcut. And if you don't do that, you're going to come up here to Edit, File, and you're going to go File, Document Setup. So I don't want to keep doing that every time. So my first tip is set a shortcut for the few things that you know you're going to do a lot. So this is where we get to do a few things. The units I'm going to leave alone. I may change my precision because I'm doing a floor plan, so I really don't need it to the 64th precision when I go to do my dimensions. That might be something I would change. The references, I don't have any, so we're blank. We're starting from scratch. The paper itself, I've already set the paper size, but if for some reason I wanted to change that or some reason I wanted to set it up like a unique paper size that doesn't exist in the welcome screen, I could do that here. This is where I want to point out briefly the margins. Now, I like using margins and I like using guides and grids, but there's no quick way to toggle them on and off. I'm an InDesign person. That's what I'm used to. So I don't use CAD as much as I used to. I use InDesign. And then, so Donovan, are you familiar with CAD or InDesign? What would you use now if you were like laying out a sheet set? Do you use LayOut?
Currently I use LayOut. I have used InDesign in the past, but that has been pretty much the limitation of my experience in that regard.
Well, if you're familiar with InDesign, you can just press a button. It's W, and it shows you your guides, and then it turns them off. Now with LayOut, if you want to turn your margins on and off, you have to go back into document setup. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to use the margins here for a second. I'm going to create my own grids and guides. And the reason why is because, and I'll show you why in just a second. So let's do that. So if you want it, Donovan, if I'm just working for a second, this is also a time that you can, if there's anything that, yeah, anyway, I don't have to talk all the way through this. This is pretty straightforward.
So there are a lot of comments coming in from all of our platforms, from YouTube, from LinkedIn, from Facebook. A lot of people seem to use LayOut quite a bit. There have been comments about people saying, speed issues, slowness issues with larger models and things like that, which you started to touch on. One comment that I really like saying that, there are a lot of users that have issues with speed, but the only speed issue I have with LayOut is my ability is I still really don't know what I'm doing, which I feel like I would fall under that camp too. But there does seem to be quite a bit of people that do use layout on a regular basis. So that's great that they're here joining us so that we can all, learn something new. Because the point of these lives as we get together is to come and to work on these projects as a community. Giving feedback from people that are here live with us, depending, regardless of what platform they're on. And we're all here learning together from Eric. It's awesome.
So that speaking of learning together, I learned this recently is that I often will copy. So right now I'm just setting up some guides, and the reason why I'm setting them up, and I'll go into detail a little bit later, why I'm not using the grid. Actually, maybe I should just say that right now. Some of you are probably just thinking, why are you setting up your own guides? You can just use the grid. And I will say that yes, I can use the grid for those that aren't. For those that don't or aren't sure, you can snap to the grid. So in this case, if you can't, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, it's really light. So maybe what I'll do is pop over here to my grid, and I'm just going to beef that color up just a little bit. I think it's going to make it easier to see for those watching at home. So you can just say, oh, I want to draw a rectangle, and I'm just going to snap it. It'll snap to the grid. But what it won't tell me is, I don't know where the center is. I don't know where, if I wanted to do like layout, like thumbnails of like design strategies or concept alternatives, I wouldn't know how to space it equally other than just to do the math myself. So for me, yes, the grid is a great option, but I find myself also often not wanting to snap to the grid because I want that free form movement. So typically by default, I turn my grid snap off. So that's why I'm just setting this up. What I'm doing is just copying and pasting. So just like SketchUp, you can use the move tool. There's no move tool because if you hover over an object in layout, it becomes the move tool, right? It becomes the crosshairs. So if you hold option, just like in SketchUp, you can do a move copy. So it's basically a move copy. And I would just come over here and say, I want to move that 2 inches. And just like in SketchUp, I can enter times. How many times do I want to copy that? 8 times. And then all of a sudden you can see that just setting up something like a really quick grid didn't take very long because I'm using the modifier key, which is the option. I always say Alt, but I think it's the Control Option. So it's Option on a Mac. And then I can copy multiple. So this is kind of my grid, and I'm setting this up for a reason because the way I like to work is not so much like a title block, so much where it's like, it's not, do you know what I mean? Like I'm not getting things stamped and I'm not putting rev clouds. So, there's a lot of information a title block has that in this case, I'm going to omit. So I'm going to do a very simplified title block here together as part of our template process. But before I do that, now that I've got these guides set up, the first thing I can do is, if you'll notice, I still have my margins on. So now I don't need my margins. So basically I can put that back where it was. I can just turn my margins off. They were under paper. There we go. So if I want this grid to show up on every single page, what I would do is make sure that it's on a layer. So I'll pull this over to the side so it's easier to see. So by default, SketchUp comes with a default. Sorry, I said SketchUp. I'm probably going to do that a bunch. I'm probably going to say SketchUp instead of layout.
That's all right. We're picking up what you're putting down.
You're putting it. Okay,
yeah.
Good. We're all on the same page. I also sometimes will say layers instead of tags, which I know that's a boo-boo because we should know better. But anyway. So it comes with a default tag, which is just basically like, again, it's a default tag, and it comes with an on every page. So this is kind of funny because if I'm used to, again, layout. So if you're used to working in a program like layout, then you might find that it's just a little bit different on how, sorry, I said I'm mixing it up. Yeah. If you're used to something like InDesign, it's basically, this is like a master page. They call them parent pages now. So anything that's on an every page layer was going to show up on every page. So if I just rename this one and I just call this guides, and I just make sure that I move this to the guides layer. In this case, they are layers, not tags. They are actually layers because you can layer order them. Now, all of a sudden, I have my margins. And my grids and guides on a guides layer. And it's on every page. And the reason why that's cool, and I'm going to put this over back here now, is if I add a new page, you can see what happens. Actually, I don't want to do that because I duplicated the page. If you add this little plus sign and you add new page, you go to the next page, you can see, there it is. So because it's on every page, if I turn that off and I switched it to a single page, then when I create a new page, those guides wouldn't be there. So you don't have to do these guides
So
like
a
I
couple
am.
of comments,
Yeah, go ahead.
real quick about snapping. In terms of snapping, you showed us that you can snap to the grid. Is there snapping to the margins as well?
Yes, by default, you're going to snap. You can snap to anything that's there. So if I put a rectangle tool, you can see it when I hover over. If you zoom in, if you can see it, uh, it says that it's on that line. So now what I can do, what's cool about this is that if I wanted when I go to bring my SketchUp window in later, if I wanted to snap this on the center points, I know that I'm laid out equally. Or if I know that I'm doing like images, often I'll do mood boards. So you can come over here and say, I want to snap that. And then I just use my move tool, my move copy tool. I already know what that spacing is, ×4. And then there you go. So yes, you can snap it to, even with your grids off and your grid snap off, you're still snapping to everything, right? You're snapping to geometry and you're snapping to your model. And if I wanted to, I could also, if I didn't want to edit this, I could lock this, because then it'll show up when I touch it, it'll show up as locked, and I won't actually be able to do anything with that. So it's a little bit, hopefully you can see that at home, everyone. I know that the colors that I'm using are a bit faint, and that's intentionally because you don't want your guides and your title block necessarily to overpower things. I'm leaving this zone at the bottom that I'm calling the footer. This is where I would normally put a title. I'd put the project name in, and we're going to do that next. So yeah, this is sort of what I'm calling my title block. I like it clean and simple with as sort of little information as possible. I want the project name, the date, the page number. I want the page name, right? Maybe a legend, north arrow, that kind of stuff, scale bar, but I don't want like a bunch of stuff that I don't need. So I'm keeping this super simple. This default layer, I'm going to rename this one to my SketchUp model. I am going to bring the SketchUp model in a little bit, but not quite yet. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to add another one. I'm going to call this text title block. And I'm going to call one more. I'm going to create one more, and it's called text and graphics. And you're going to see why in just a second. So in this case, I'm presetting up some layers so that I'm going to have some things on different layers. Now, this is a good point for me to actually jump into a file that I already kind of set up. And the reason why is because I'm going to steal some stuff from that, so I don't have to redo it all with you here watching. I'm just going to kind of steal from myself. So I don't want to show you the end result, because that would be that would give away the show. But I do want to pull some stuff that I kind of pre-built, and I'm going to paste it off to the side. So what I did was
I did have a question come in about your guidelines. Someone's asking, so essentially the guidelines and layout function the same as the tape measure in SketchUp?
Yeah, I don't use the tape measure to set guides in SketchUp. I know some people do. So what it does is you can lay the guides will do two things. You can snap to them. It tells me, like, so now I have eighths. I have them set up as eighths. So I can split my page in half, SketchUp model and text on one side, or I can go fourths, or I can go eighths. So you don't set them up like you do with the tape measure tool. But you can copy them and move them just like geometry in SketchUp. So you can copy it using the move copy tool, and then you can tell it how far you want to space those. So in a way, it's like, yes, it's a little bit like those guides, but it's not exactly. I hope that answers that question. So why did I set this stuff up here? Because I was thinking, like, the way that I think about these document packages is more like a graphic designer and less like an architect, because I think it's just because my brain sort of flips between technical and creative. So for me, I was thinking, like, put some placeholder text in here. And because this is going to be part of my template here, I've got two choices. I can take this pre-set up stuff here, and I'm going to go into detail a little bit about what it is and how I set it up. Now, if I wanted to make this easy to pull in, I could create a scrapbook, which I'm going to show you how to do that, or I can just leave it off to the side. For right now, I'm going to leave it off to the side. Some of you might think what Tyson calls the boneyard. And for some people, it'd be like, well, why would you want to do that? Well, first of all, this first page right here, this is going to be what I'm calling a template page. So even if you come over here to your pages, there's a little icon that says show in presentation. A little, looks like a little TV monitor. I can turn that off. And I already know that my blank page, I don't have to call it blank. I can call it starting page, template page, whatever I want to call it. I know that this first page is just basically like a working page that then I can use. I can copy it. Remember, we're making a template. So I want to make sure that I have everything that I'm going to need for my template that isn't already in a scrapbook that I can't already just pull really quickly. So I've got my own custom scales in here that I built. This is built using the scale drawing tool. So if anyone knows how to use the scale drawing tool in LayOut, you can actually draw scales with 1-to-1 dimensions. So what's cool about that is you can see I can actually enter 50 feet because I'm drawing it at 1-to-100 scale. So I won't go into detail on that because that's a little bit of a off topic, but that's how I sort of drew these. I drew it with the make scale drawing tool in here in LayOut. But this is where I want to go next. I want to go to AutoText. If I pop back into my keyboard shortcut into my document setup, I've got this section called AutoText. And AutoText is basically anything within these brackets. If you have those two brackets, you write that code. This is like a code. So when you write page number, it's going to tell LayOut, display the page number. Same thing with page count, total page count. So if I type that in between the brackets and I put that on my page, it'll actually show the total page count. And then when I add more pages, it'll automatically update, right? That's why it's called AutoText. So, this isn't an introduction to LayOut stream, so I'm not going to go like too basic. I'm going to say, how does this apply to making me work faster? Like, how can I use this? So the first thing I did is I copied all of these and I just pasted them in as text. So I have them all here. You can see that already the current date, the date created, the date modified, those three are all showing as today, right? And then the company, which I've listed as does not have any information for. So this document, we don't have an address yet. We haven't entered that in. I don't have an author or company name, and I don't have a file name. So let's do those things now. The first thing if I save this, I'll save it to my desktop for now, and I'm going to call this LayOut live stream template. It's a pretty big name, but let's go with that. So if I save that, watch what's going to happen. That one changed. I know, hopefully you caught that. Now this one changed. It changed from file name to LayOut live stream template. Now some of these you have to go back into the AutoText section in order to enter the information. Like when it says the author, well, I'm the author, or I could say the company. I could say, so Eric, you all know my name by now, hopefully. And then the company name is going to be, I'm going to say Trimble SketchUp. So some of those you can enter in right here. You enter it in the document setup. So remember, this is for this document. So if I created a new document, these settings that I'm entering, they're going to reset. And I think the file name sets itself automatically. The dates set themselves automatically. The page numbers set themselves automatically. But I do want to share one thing because I have a template page in air quotes. So I may want to say, I'm going to start my page numbering. I want to start it at page 2. So the second page in my document is going to be, I'm sorry, I said the wrong one. What I want to do is if I had another page, like if I create a new page, I want to say that this page, that's the start of my numbering. So it's going to ignore that template page completely. And what I mean by that is if I go over here and let's just for fun, let's just do this. Let's just grab the page count. I'm going to grab page number and page. We're going to grab these three. We're going to set this up in the title block right now, which is going to be, actually, I'm going to grab all of these. I'm going to grab, which other ones? The funny thing about the AutoText though is, what's up? Yeah. Any questions about AutoText? I'm going to start to lay these out on the page now.
We got 2 quick questions real quick. The first one, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what he's talking about. Maybe what you do. Said scale drawings is a great function. Scrapbooks are too, but what about blocks and components?
Uh, well, I'll have to see if if that's part of the templating process, if that makes sense to cover, because layout doesn't use blocks and components the way that SketchUp does. Layout references your SketchUp model. So if you're using blocks and components correctly, then that information is coming in. So we're really thinking about this is the documentation process. So this is text, this is annotations, support imagery. This is all the stuff that basically we need to add to our model. And we're taking the first bit of this stream to talk about how setting this up by thinking in advance, we're setting up a template that we can then reuse. So when we bring our model in, so we're not bringing our model in yet. So I'll have to come back to that.
Okay.
So this is,
So next
yeah.
question is, when I use the text or auto text, I use capital letters, but the date automatically only writes in lowercase. Any solutions besides typing it in manually?
Sorry, say that one more time because I'm typing as I'm listening. So I'm
That's all right.
okay.
So the question says, when I use text or auto text, I use capital letters, but the date automatically only writes in lowercase. Are there any solutions besides typing in manually?
No, that's a good question. I think that's built into the I think that's built into the back end. So if I go back to document setup, and if we go to current date, it says the format here. It gives you the ability to change the format. It's funny because it's actually showing it in it shows it in capitals. So unless it had a built-in option here. I don't know if you've already checked those. I'm looking at these right here, and it looks like MMM, which is the month. That's the month full spelled out fully. It's auto interpreting that in sentence case. So I think that if you're using AutoText, you unfortunately can't control the case. And if somebody knows better, then correct me. You can, if you didn't want to go with this date format, you could, it's not doing it manual. You just create an auto text. You can create a new one. It's a good segue. You can create a new one. And I'm just going to call this, I don't know. I'm just going to call this anything, custom text. And I'm going to go add. And then within custom text, I'm going to write the words date in caps. So now if I'm in here, all I have to do is use my text tool, brackets, date. Or I might have to actually enter it in caps. Let's see here. It didn't work because I have to enter what the date is. So in this case, well, that doesn't really help you though, does it? I'm just thinking through this in real time, which is why I'm slow. It doesn't really help you because if you're gonna set up an auto text with the date and it's not pulling from in the internal system, then you might as well just type it yourself. But the nice thing about that is you can put it on every page. So if you change it once, it changes it for the whole document. So it's not like you have to go back and change it on each page. So ignore what I was saying here. You can create custom text fields, but I don't think that helps you in this situation.
It doesn't seem to, yeah.
No,
We did
okay.
get another question from YouTube asking, how do I set the page number of total pages?
How do I set the page number of total pages? That's page count. So I'm kind of playing around here. I'm forgetting. So I'm writing page number of page count. And what I'm trying to do right now, it's saying that I'm on the template page and I've told it to omit that page. So if I go to page 2, if I take this here and I move this auto text that I'm playing with here, I want to make sure that whether I do this in the beginning or the end, I want to put this on my title block text because the title block text I'm going to switch that to every page. So now what happens is you can see the difference. The text by itself that's on a single page is blue. The text that is on every page, if you highlight it, turns red. So that way I know that this title block, anything I put in the title block that's on the title block tag or layer, if I turn that on and off, it's going to show up on every page. So now when I go to the next page, it's going to say page 1 of 2. If I create a new page, it's going to be 2 of 3, right? So what it's doing is it's continually updating that information, which I'm going to get rid of those pages because Still working on my template page. So that's the first part, was basically putting this, figuring out what I want to use. I wanted to use the current date because, you can use, there's 3 different dates. Date published means the date you export the package. So the last time you exported this package is your published date. So if you never export it, it'll say unpublished. So I don't want to do that. And for me, I'm just going to say my current date. So whenever I open this thing and I save it, that's like the latest version. So for now, I'm going to use current date as like the date that I want to put in here. So hope that helps. Yeah. This is the kind of stuff where it's like, where I enjoy this kind of part of the process. It's just, I get into my head and I just kind of get to play around. I get to kind of think through things. So I want to put the date. I want to put the pages. The next thing I want to put is, I want to put the page name. Now I already have some titles set up. So what I could do is just come over here, and because I've already dropped that text in, I could just come over here and just type it in manually, page name. So instead of copying and pasting, I can just type it, and there it is. So it says template page. So if I create a new, move that to text title block, right? Create a new page. Now it says page 7 because it doesn't have a name. So once I name this page, if I call this plan, because I know the next page I want to do is going to be the plan view. So if I type in plan or site plan, let's try site plan. That sounds better. Right? It changes. So let me finish this up. I only have a couple more things I want to put as part of my title block. I want to put who created it, and I want to put the name of the project. So the name of this project is what's called the file name. And then I want to put the author and the company. So in this case, I'll come over here and I'm using you can see I'm using my guides. If I didn't want to use my guides, I could turn them off, but I'm using my guides to make sure that things are, locking and stuff. So I've got here file name. I said I was going to grab 2 more. I want to do company. So who did this document, and who, both from a company standpoint and who made this document from a individual contributor standpoint. So I'm going to paste that. I don't know which one I want to go first. I'm going to put my name first, and then I'm going to put the company name. Yeah, right? Does that work? That looks good. I like that. That's cool.
Those look good.
That looks good.
We do have another question that I think might be more applicable later than right now. Somebody on YouTube is asking, how do I know that I'm snapping correctly while adding dimensions? Is that a right now question or a later question?
How do I know I'm snapping correctly when I'm adding dimensions? Well, if you hit the D tool, it snaps. It ought to snap. The only thing is that you're going to find is that if you have a SketchUp model and you're like zoomed way out, it's going to be really difficult. Like imagine you have crown molding. Like, are you snapping to the wall or the molding? It might be the difference of a ½ an inch. But if you're zoomed way out, you may not be able to know whether you've snapped to the wall or the molding. It's only a ½ inch away. So in the document, in the file, it's going to look like, teeny tiny. My suggestion is, like everything in layout, if you ever have a problem with anything, moving something, copying something, zoom in. Just zoom in. And that actually is a good question, because like what I'll say is just zoom in. And then if I needed to snap to something, it would be just easier for me. I can see that much easier because I'm zoomed way in. I'm way better than doing it at a distance. And that actually opens up another question for shortcuts. There are 2 zoom shortcuts that I wanted to tell you about. One of them is zoom to object. So if you're doing a lot of zooming, like for example, I have this little tiny construction detail and I'm way zoomed out, you can sit here and say, I'm going to hit Shift Z. I mapped it as a zoom to object. So now look what it did. It brought me all the way down to this object. So there I was. So if you have a bigger object, if I paste that, and if I have a bigger object and I select that object and I hit my keyboard shortcut Shift Z, I've zoomed to that object. And then I'm going to hit Shift Extents. So zoom extents, I'm going to zoom back out. So I can hit Shift Extents, zoom E, zoom Z, right? So Z, E. That's going to help you, because if you ever feel like you're scrolling a lot like this, like I'm scrolling a lot and making people sick at home, seizure warning, yeah, use that keyboard shortcut. You can find those, you can map those however you want. If you go into shortcuts, are not in document setup, because shortcuts apply to every layout drawing. So it's not document specific. So in this case, if I wanted to go zoom, I would say, here we go. So zoom to page, zoom in, zoom out, zoom extents. I think the zoom selection and that zoom extents, I think those two are really helpful. I think you should.
Now, this isn't a question that came in, but more of a comment from Transom, who a lot of people from the YouTube lives know,
Hey, Transom.
said, I took the layout class on SketchUp Campus a little while ago. It was really good. I recommend it to anyone who is starting with layout.
Yeah, thanks everyone. We have 2 layout courses on SketchUp Campus. And even though they're of previous versions of layout, I mean, obviously these programs get better and better. But the general tools and the general process is the same. We have more features, which I'm going to go into here, we're going to utilize. But for the most part, yes, if you don't know where to start, please check out learn.sketchup.com. Check out either of those for free. And yeah, let me know what you think. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but the point I want to make here, and then I'm going to move on, is that I've just, by setting up some stuff here, these are the things I know I'm going to work with. I know I'm going to want to work with text. I know I'm going to want to work with callouts. I know I'm going to want to need a scale. I know I've got some prototypical scales that I always work with. So this is all stuff that I want to just put. I have 2 choices. Again, I'm going to show you both. I'm either going to put it in a scrapbook or I'm going to put it just right into my template. I'm just going to sit off to the side. I want to show you one more, and I want to show you one more AutoText before I move on, because I feel like hopefully I did that justice of why to use AutoText and how to customize it if you need to change it. But one of these is, if you come over here to document setup, there's one that's called sequence. If you don't see it here, you can add one that's missing. This is kind of tricky. It's called sequence. So if you were doing a table of contents or something and you wanted to show numbers just like you would in Microsoft Word, and the numbers continue to kind of grow and climb, what you'd want to do is add a sequence. Now I'm using that, I coded 2 sequences, one for A and one for B. So I have an A sequence and a B sequence. And I'm using those for my legend callouts. And you can see here, the legend callout, the little key number or key letter. I have my A sequence is what's in the legend, and my B sequence is in the free floating ones. And the reason why is when I come over here, eventually I'm going to, use my move tool, use my move shortcut, place that into my view. And then what I'm going to do is copy these. Oh, well, actually, I wouldn't want to do that. I just want to move that. I wouldn't want to copy it because it's a sequence. So the numbers are going to change. The reason why I have 2 sequences in this, and I'm going to show you when I drop my SketchUp model, when I finally get my SketchUp model. Oh yeah, there you go. If you zoomed way out like this, sometimes it's hard to grab things. So again, just zoom in and then it's way easier to grab what you're looking for. So if I had one sequence, then every time I add a number, it would just keep going in the sequence, which is why I have 2 sequences, one for the legend and one where I can put my notations on the map. So if I add another one here, if I come over here and say, copy this and times 4, you can see what it did. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now all of a sudden it gave me all the way up to 10 auto sequenced. So that's a really cool way. That's something InDesign doesn't have. That's something that, I don't know if CAD has something similar to that. Really, really cool feature that I think is helpful. So these are just, yeah.
Yeah, we got another question. I'm not sure the answer to this one. Maybe you do. Someone in the YouTube chat is asking, why is the angle of SketchUp isometry different from layout? Am I pronouncing that right? Isometry? Isometry? Isometry.
Isometry. Yeah, I say isometric, or short would be ISO. We can look at, I don't know the answer to that. Just because I don't think I've really noticed that. So that's a good question. Maybe when we get to popping the model in, remind me, we can come back to that. We could look at that difference. But I tend to set my view.
And we got we got a question from LinkedIn asking, for larger sequence numbers, does the text box have to be changed?
Oh, yeah, you saw what I did. Now, I did not pre-plan this well. I mean, I was just kind of threw this together for this demo. So I think what they're saying is, and I'll show you, if I take this number and I go times 6, what you're going to do is you're going to see that it's the larger numbers, the double digit numbers are going to start to hit the border. I would say that's just my error. It doesn't automatically change the scale. And unfortunately, there isn't something like in SketchUp, like components, where I wish maybe this is something that they'll do someday in layout, where I can say set this as a component, which is basically if I wanted to scale my little frame, if I wanted to scale this frame up a little bit, let me see, I'm trying to grab just the corner. Yeah, there we go. So if I wanted to kind of scale that, in a perfect world, all of them would update because I made it a component. But I don't think we're there yet. But that's okay. Something for them to work on, the team to work on. So that's it. I want to get into pages because before I can save a template, I want to put my SketchUp model in, and I want to build some more pages. This basically gives me a really good starting point. So what I want to do is pause here because I did mention scrapbooks. If I wanted to take all of the information on this page and just call this and say, you know what, let's just use this as a scrapbook, I can do that. I can just come over here and I can just say File, Save as a Scrapbook. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to just call this Layout Livestream Template, save it. Now, for those that don't know what scrapbooks are, it's just kind of like your components browser in SketchUp. It's like a way to store all these useful things that you might find yourself using at any point in time during the documentation process. So rev clouds, again, symbols, cut lines, and they have them sort of tied to the different styles of title blocks that you can get with your templates. In addition, they also have some fun things like people. So you can see they have different people preset at different scales. So that's kind of cool. If I'm working on a 1/2 inch equals 1 foot drawing, I can just grab a person. You just literally grab one person. If they're grouped, if you group it, then they'll grab them all. But if they're individual, you just grab one and set it. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about scrapbooks. They're pretty straightforward. Scrapbooks are cool. Now, here's the one where I just created layout live stream template. So if I created, just for a second, I'm just going to grab a completely blank document. Here's my template. I can literally just take this and I can drag and drop any of these components. Now, if I don't group it, I'm only going to get the pieces individually. Now, here's my concern, my only concern with the template, scrapbook, putting your template stuff in a scrapbook rather than putting it in your template, just leaving it in your template. Number one is you can see when I drag and drop it, like in this case for my guides, it doesn't tell me where to place it. So I'd have to go back in and realign that. The second thing it does, and I don't know, maybe a future version of Layout will fix this, but all of this information, all that auto text, I already put all these things on different layers. The template remembers the layers. Scrapbook does not remember the layers. So if I have 6 different layers, graphics, north arrows, text, titles, footer, if I have all that information and I bring that into a new file, it's just going to put it on the default tag because, the default layer, because you can see that layers are actually held, they're actually driven by your template. They're not driven by your scrapbook. So I just want to kind of say that, just kind of be careful with if you are putting things on scrapbook, just make sure it's stuff that you don't care if you're going to lose that layering information. Little side tip there. So that was why I wanted to, that's why I'm leaving this stuff for right now in this document. Okay, so I have 2 options of how I want to sort of pull stuff in. So let's get in and start doing what I think a lot of you are probably like, wow, Eric, you've talked for 45 minutes now and you literally have guides and text, right? What are you going to do with the rest of this time? Well, the rest of the time is going to be focusing on the model itself. And then we're going to save it to a template. And then I want to share, and then we're going to have some time to do some fun things. So I want to kind of get through this part. Now I have the model I showed you that I'm going to work with, that I want to lay out. This is the one I want to lay out. But remember, I'm setting up a template. So I don't really want to place this model in on every page because it's going to be specific to this model. I want to create a general template that when I save my layout template, all I have to do is put any model in and it auto-populates. So in this case, I'm going to come back to this, but not quite yet. I want to start with what I'm calling my model template. So my model template has all the things that I would normally draw in a SketchUp model. You can, if you wanted to, you could save this as a template in SketchUp. I'm going to save this and call this the layout model template. So that way, if I created a new drawing, oh, I think it saved it as my default template. I didn't want to do that. Oh, well, I'll fix that later. Watch when I create a new one. When it opens this one, but you get the idea. So what I've done here is, if you don't have to save this as a template if you don't want to. So what I've got is, I'm going to go back to my original one. Excuse me, I took a little tangent to go save that as a template, and then it created a new file. So I'm going to go back to my original one. So what I have is I have some drafting, I have some styles set up. So the reason why I've assigned the styles to scenes is because if I purge my model, it'll lose those styles. So I have a drafting style, my default viewing style, my color by tag style, and what I call working, which is a fast style where everything's optimized. I turn off all the profiles and I turn off the textures. So I have those sort of 4 styles, which I'm not going to go into because that's not really that's not really a part of this. But I also set up, and I'm going to toggle this on just so that you can see, I already added 5 sections, and you can see that one of them cuts in the middle and faces to the left, which I'm calling west. One of them cuts in the middle and faces to the right, which I'm calling east. I do the same thing with north and south, and I do one with the plan view. In this case, I don't really care where I'm cutting because I may have to adjust this. I just want to have something in my model so that when I place in my template, so that when I swap this out later, all this stuff will already be pre-assigned. So you have to you bear with me here. It might be a little confusing if you haven't tried any of this before. So I'm toggling those sections off. Now, let me pause here for a second and say why this is important. Sections are kind of interesting in SketchUp if you don't have a ton of experience with them. Now, sections themselves, they are tied to whether a section cut is displayed can be tied to a scene. And I'll give you an example here. Tied to a style. So I've created a section style. And if I come over here, you can see that section cuts will either show or won't show based on your style. So I can toggle those off, update that. And what's interesting about this is that here's where it gets confusing. You can activate a cut in SketchUp by double-clicking it. You can just double-click on a cut and it activates it. Or you can right-click it and say activate cut, active cut. This is my active cut. Now, a scene remembers which cut is active, but a style remembers to show the cut. And this is really important because I think if you're not really well-versed in SketchUp, that might be kind of confusing. And I want to say that because what you need to do is you need both. We need a section scene and a section style. And I'll give you an example. I've preset these up here. Now, in case you're wondering, this little building doesn't represent anything. It's just a placeholder building, and it's just so that I can see, so I know that when I swap this out later with my design, I just know where to kind of place it. So it just kind of gives me a visual reference. So this is a placeholder. Even if I really wanted to, I could, I could put it on a dashed line tag, but I don't think I need to. I think we kind of understand. So really quick, I'm going to go through these. I set up a plan view. I put a north arrow on there to show that north is up. In this case, I've got a perspective 1, perspective 2, elevation A, elevation B, C, and D. So basically, again, if I turn my section cuts on, you can see I've got each one of those already predetermined. And that's important. And this is important, and I'm going to show you why. So let me know if I went too fast on that, because the whole point of this little file is so that I can use this to pre-populate my layout template. I'm not worried because, listen, I'm thinking about this like the 80-20 rule. I'm automating 80% of what I know I'm going to do later. And I know that 20% or more, maybe more, is going to be specific to each design file that I'm working on. So what I mean is that even though I pre-populated all of this, if I have a project that has 2 floors, it would be treated a little bit different. If I had a project that was really long, the scale is going to be different. So in this case, this is just sort of a general, this is just general a starting point for me, which is that 80-20 rule that I'm talking about. So let's pop this in. I'm going to grab this here. It's as easy as dragging and dropping. And I'm on my first page, which is my site plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center this on the page. I've got my guides. Remember, it's why I like these, because I'm not snapping to the grid. I'm snapping to my own guides. And in this case, what I want to do is I'm using the boundary. I'm taking the boundary and I'm kind of maximizing it. Now, I don't know if I want to do that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I might want to have a legend and some text off to the side. But for right now, I'm just going to assume that I want to use as much screen real estate as I can. And all I have to do here is just switch in the SketchUp model window in layout. All I have to do is just switch the scene. Now, I don't have to have scenes, but like I said, section cuts need scenes because it doesn't know which cut to show. So in this case, I don't even have to have these scenes if I didn't want them. Right? So here's the plan view. And then I'm going to set this to a scale. But again, the scale doesn't really matter because if I work on a different project, I'm going to have to change the scale. But for right now, I'm just going to pick a scale that I think works for this placeholder model, which I'm going to go with this 3/8 inch equals 1 foot. And I think that'll at least display well on the page as a template. And then when I go to put my model in, I'm probably going to have to change the scale because every model is going to be a slightly different. Every design is going to be slightly different. So I wanted
we
to
have
center...
a comment coming in from LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn. Everyone, hi, LinkedIn.
I said comment. It was actually a question saying, would section cut numbers or names on the SketchUp model translate over to layout automatically?
The section cut names. Yeah, that's a good question. But you mean when would you use it though? Because layout will reference tags, but if you don't show your section cuts, I toggle my section cuts off. So the problem is that even if you named it in SketchUp, I'm not showing it. So I don't know how layout would know to reference it. In this case, what I would do is I would bring in my own information from a scrapbook and I would actually show the section cut using a scrapbook and not using the section cut in SketchUp. I hope that answers the question. So I'm going to go through these pretty quick. This is the nice thing about this is once you kind of get it set up. Oh yeah, thanks Donovan. Keep those questions coming. These are great questions, everyone. Again, I'm showing you some things that I think are helpful. This is definitely not the only way to do it, and I'm definitely not covering everything here in 2 hours today. I just really want to think about what again, I'm just reinforcing. Oh, look at that. See that? Sorry, I just caught a mistake. That needs to be moved over to the title block layer. There, now it shows up. Yeah. So anyway, you get it. Okay. So now I've got 2 pages. I have a template page, which does not show in the presentation, and I will not export it. It's just there for reference. And then I have a site plan page. Now I'm going to go through and I'm just going to duplicate the site plan page. And I'm going to do it. I'm doing some math here. 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the reason why is because I had perspective. I'm just calling this 01, but I might name this, kitchen or whatever it is. I can change the 01 later if I know where that perspective is taking. But because this is a template, I'm just putting in just sort of more generic information. And then I'm going to and then those are my 2 perspectives that I know I typically want to show, one from one side of the room and one from the other side of the room. So I would say that from a documentation set, you would likely want to show at least a perspective, at least a plan, and at least two section elevations, right? I would imagine for most projects to really kind of communicate the design. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop in each of the elevations. Now, I know that I do this wrong, but it's the way my brain thinks, is that I call the elevation, the direction you're looking, I call that the orientation, like if it's north. So if you're looking, if you cut the section in the middle and you're facing north, I call that facing north. I think it's the proper way to do it is to do the opposite because you're actually standing on the south side of the cut. So it would be the south section, even though you're facing north. So someone maybe from the chat correct me. Oh, Donovan, I'm sorry. I think I blocked your, I think I blocked,
That's okay.
I can
I'm
close
I'm
this.
still uh I'm still following along. You're good. We
Okay.
do
Yeah.
have a
Just
question coming in from YouTube. Is there an auto text reference for viewport scale?
auto text reference for viewport scale. Um, no, because auto text is auto text, right? So viewport scale is something different. What I'm going to do, like when I copy these, I've already set a scale before I duplicated the page. So I'm going to give you an example here. All I have to do is switch the scene, elevation A. There it is. So if I go over here to elevation west, I'm calling this the west elevation. And then if I go over here to east, all I have to do is switch my scene to elevation B, which is elevation east. And then there you go. So north, same thing. So you don't really need to it sort of automates itself because in a way you're duplicating the page. But you have to tell, if you duplicate a page, all you have to do is reassign which elevation you're using. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, I don't think there's no way to know what scale. You have to tell it what scale you want it. Because even if, in this case, 3/8 inch equals 1 foot fits the page, I might purposefully want a smaller scale so that I have more room, to add, call outs and dimensions around the edges. So there's no way that, layout knows what scale you would want. I want to point something out here really quick. Under the style settings for your SketchUp model, there is this thing called background. I think it's on by default. If that is on, look what happens. Do you see that I've lost my grids and guides? Now I can pull my guides, my guide layer. I can pull that up to the top so that it always sits on the top. But then now it's blocking my SketchUp model. So if I do want my guides to sit at the bottom of everything, then what I would want in this case to do is probably turn my background off. So if you turn your background off, now my SketchUp model sits above the guides, and but I'm not blocking them, right? So I could still, if I wanted to use this as a reference for to put some images or something underneath here, I could still use that as a reference. So I hope that helps. If I was
Did
smart, I
have a
would have.
request for me to remind you about the isometric question.
The isometric question. Okay, well, let's do that. Let me go through. I made the mistake. Okay, good. Oh yeah, because this is auto text, this is great. So because this is auto text, let me share with you this. You can also change the size or the font. Like if I'm in Bento Sans, but if I wanted to go Bento Sans wide, for some reason I wouldn't want to do that, but let's say I want to do that, and I click off of this. Now look what happens. It's wider, but if I go to any of my pages, so that's really cool. It's like a master page in InDesign. So what's really cool about that is if I want to change the font at any time, I can do that and it'll change it to all of my titles or all of my information. Oh, you know what? Gosh darn it. Why didn't you tell me? I'm like blocking some information. I'm sitting here like referencing stuff that sort of, I think my head maybe was my head blocking some stuff down here in the bottom?
If that's the stuff you're referencing, then yeah. I mean,
Well, let me
we
see.
were all following along.
Yeah, I'm
People
gonna move
seem to
my,
be following along with you. So
you guys are all following around with me. Thanks. I wish somebody would have yelled at me sooner and said, you're kind of blocking the stuff that you're trying to tell us. What I was pointing at here is all I was referencing was I was in my layers panel, which I'll try to pull off to the side so you can see it better. All I was saying is that you can reorder the guides. So you probably missed that I was actually just dragging and dropping my layers to reorder them. And then I think that was all I think you missed. So
okay, here's another question from YouTube. Is there a way to change the white color of the background or add an image without creating a layer just for the background?
You can go here to paper color if you wanted to. I have not tried a texture. I'm not sure if it even gives me the option to put a paper texture in this way. I don't think it does. But if I wanted to do a color, I could come in here so that I can differentiate, like in this case, between the white of my model. I can do that, and it would apply to every single page because it's being done in the document setup. Read me the question again. Did I answer it?
Yeah, it's just, the question was just, is there a way to change the white color of the background or add an image without creating a layer just for the background?
Yes, if you add an image, it's an object. So anything you bring in has to be assigned to a layer. So if you have an image as a background, you don't have to give it its own layer, but it will apply to a layer, whether that's your graphics layer or your SketchUp model layer, or you want to put it on your guides layer. Yes, you will need, of course, and because layers are ordered, you would want a background image to be at the bottom, in which case I would create a background layer for that. But the cool thing about that is you can assign that layer to on every page. So just like a master page, that background shows up on every single page. So that's cool. So yes, you can change the color easily in document setup, and you can add an image if you wanted to, fairly easily. So I'm at a point where I'm about ready to save this as a template. So what I have here, I just want to kind of go through a really quick recap because we're at our hour mark, and I want to switch this with my SketchUp model, and I want to bring that in. I want to talk about that. The only other thing I want to do is, and I'm kind of being picky here because for anyone who knows who's worked with me, I don't know. Some things I glaze over the details, and other things I'm like a stickler for them. I want to make sure that each of these window viewports are in the same place. Now, when you set up a scene in SketchUp, it's not to scale. So this section cut might be a little bit over to the left, or it might be a little high, or it might be a little zoomed out. Once you apply a scale to it in layout, they're all the same scale, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the scene places this house in the same spot every single time. So you can see in this case, it's not even perfectly centered, but that's okay. That's sort of beside the point. I'm just going to use this reference line briefly. I'm going to pop this over to, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to paste it. So when you paste in layout, when you copy something in layout and you paste it, by default, it will automatically paste in place. So I probably should have done this earlier when I was setting up my frames, but what I want to do is I want to take the time, I'm being picky, I'm taking the time to center my viewport on the page, and I'm setting this reference line so that my elevations all hit at the exact same spot. So now I just go over here, I'm hitting Shift V, which is how paste in place works in SketchUp. That's my shortcut. But in layout, you can just use Command V or Control V. Sorry, my keycaster is
There's
showing me.
a comment coming in from YouTube.
Yeah,
Says
hi.
you're saying top and bottom on layout layers. Layout refers to front and back.
No, top. What I'm referring to is the layers. Layer. Oh, you call it front and back. Okay, I'm calling the layers top and bottom because this layer is on the top, which is my text layer, and my guide layer is on the bottom. So when I say top and bottom, that's what I mean. But I think as far as how you see it on the page, this commenter is correct. It is in the back. So if you have a layer on the bottom, it is on the back of your page. So whether you call it back or bottom, I don't think it matters, but I just want to make sure that we're clear. We're on the same page there. We're literally on the same layout page together.
Yeah. If I had sound effects ready, this is where I would add the boom
I know.
sound.
I know. I guess Aaron's got me on the puns, and Jody and Matt has definitely got all of us beat on the sound effects. So I didn't change this one yet. So before I can save this to a template, I'm going to save this. This is a perspective. This is funny. We got into a little bit of debate on the forum because someone's like, how can I make my perspective to scale? And it's like, you can't make your perspective to scale. So in this case, what I want to do is it doesn't really matter. Why is it blue though? Is it because is it because it was to scale? Let's try that again. Perspective 1. Scene. Oh, I want to reset this one. So how do I reset? This has been a while since I've done this. I want to reset this. Oh, over here. So there should be a way to basically say reset. There we go. So if you do that, if you copy one and you switch the scene and for some reason it's pulling settings from the other one, it's because I copied it. So there's this little reset button, and I'll do that again here in just a second. I want to show you that. So that's why I was a little bit confused, because I took my plan view, switched it to my perspective 01, and you can see what it's doing. It's putting me outside. It's putting me not where I saved my perspective. So what I would do is just come over here and press, just make an adjustment. And if I press reset on this one, I'm back. So I have perspective 1 and perspective 2. Now I know these aren't good perspectives, these are placeholders. So now let's save first of all, and then I want to save this as a template. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to say File, Save as a template. I'm going to call this Layout Livestream Template. You can call it whatever you want. It saves it. If you're wondering where it saves it to your application support, the same place where you put your plugins. So application support, SketchUp 2023, layout templates. So if you ever feel like you need to delete one, you can't delete it from inside of layout. You actually have to physically delete the file. So if you have a bunch of like 40 templates you don't use anymore, maybe go in and clean those up. Or wait till you get a new version of SketchUp, and I think that'll refresh it. I'm going to save that there. So now if I were to close out of this completely, which makes me a little nervous when you're live and you like close out of everything you just spent an hour working on, I'm going to come up here to File, New. Still in Layout, not in SketchUp. Now, I said that there's these great templates to choose from. These are blank ones. These are storyboard, and these are title blocks. So these are great ones that Layout has already given us. But what I'm interested in is my templates. I've already done two just as a test to see if as a proof of concept. I'm going to ignore those. I'm going to use the one that we just did together, Layout Live Stream Template. That is brand new. I just saved it. Click that. Open it up. You can see if I was smart, I would have saved it on the first page, but I actually saved it on perspective, and it remembered that in the template. So when I launch it, excuse me, I was saying launch and open at the same time. So when I open a new file from this template, it remembers which page you saved it when you saved it as a template. So maybe start on that starting page. Just a little tip. So yeah, any other questions? That's it. I'm ready to, we've got plenty of time, but I'm ready to pop my model in and, I don't know, maybe even do some other tips and tricks about, some people are asking about isometric views and they're asking about adding dimensions and stuff. So we're talking about speeding things up here. We're talking about doing the pre-work so that later we can save ourselves some time. And I'm going to show you this. I'm going to prove to you if I'm right. Hopefully I'm right. I'm going to do this twice. And by twice means that all I have to do is click relink model, right? And then maybe change the scale. So if I do that, then I'm doing 2 document sets, but I only have to it should only take just a few minutes to create 2 document sets because I've already done all the work.
Because we did have a comment earlier of someone saying, all this is good and all, but how do I work faster in layout?
All right. Well, you're right. Okay, that's what we're getting to. This is part 1 is templating. I probably spent more time than I think anyone at home wanted to, but this is important because if you know how you work, if you work on single family homes or if you work on certain projects of certain sizes, you should be setting up as much stuff as you can so that every time you open a project, all your stuff is there. But you're right. The other half of it is actually working with the SketchUp model. So let's get the show on the road. So in here, I have my model. I have my dummy model, which is just in my template SketchUp model. So let's go ahead and switch that. If I go to Document Setup, we have this thing called References. So if you bring in, the new layout lets you reference CAD files. So it's cool. You can keep CAD files synced. You can create different models. You can have 6 or 7 different models in here. So they're all going to show up here in your references in Document Setup. I have my blank template in here. So I am going to do 2 things. I'm going to add my new model to my template, and then I'm going to refresh. And then that's it. So let's pop over back into SketchUp. Because this is my template file, right? This is my model template. So I'm going to toggle these on just for fun. And I need my co-working space. So I need to reopen up my co-working space, because this is ultimately the project that I want to lay out. This is the one I want to work with. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to paste this. I'm going to delete that. And I know that the intersection here is where the center is, or I might leave that there. I may actually leave that there just for a minute, and it tells me just where the center of my section cuts are. And I'm going to paste my model into that place. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to be doing some adjustments when I get into layout anyway. But in this case, there you go. I think I actually had a section cut already in this one. So that's actually a good point. If you're going to, yeah, I may want to, if I already have sections in this model, I may want to just double check. Yeah, just take out any sections because we're using the template for the sections. So that's it. You can see I placed it. Now this is my my dummy model. Get rid of that. You don't even need that if you didn't even want to. You don't even need that. It's just there. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to save this to my working file. This is my model template, but now it has my co-working space. So let's do this. So back in layout, under document setup, under references, I'm going to relink this model. And this time I'm going to choose my model template co-working space. And I want to see what happens. This is where it's always like on live stream, you're just like, okay, come on. Oh, you know what? I think there's one more thing you have to do, which I think that just reminded me. I didn't check to make sure that these are actually working. Where's all my furniture? Oh, I might have had to copy that separately. Bear with me. Do you see what I did? I made a mistake. Usually I have this all grouped and nested, so I copied just the outer shell instead of everything. So that was a dummy. That was a dummy move for me. I need to make sure that I select.
That's all right, Eric. We all make mistakes.
No,
You're good.
No, it's not all right. No, our people, our viewers expect more from us, and I just want to say I'm sorry, everybody at home, letting you down big time. I'm going to take everything this time at once. I'm going to copy that. And then within my model template, definitely don't need that one. I'm going to paste that back in place. Not in place. I'm just going to paste it. So where is it? There it is. There it is. I kind of want that somewhat centered. Again, I'm going to make some adjustments in layout. I kind of want to center that on my section cuts. Now, here's the thing that I was trying to say. Here's the thing that we need to do is I need to double check to make sure that that everything is still showing correctly here. Styles, that's good. Okay. Well, this is actually kind of weird. Kind of displaying, it's showing my section. It's showing my, I shouldn't have to toggle those on and off. I'm going to make sure that my style is updated.
We had a comment from YouTube about your mistake saying it's called the Tyson Live effect, Eric.
The Tyson Live. Yeah, you know what? It's funny because I'm that type of person where it's like Aaron's like, just riff on it. Just make stuff go on the fly. And the mistakes are the learning process. And Tyson's good at that too. But I'm like, no, it has to work exactly as I plan it every single time. So let's do this. Let's see. Let's take a look here. So the only thing that it didn't do is when I dropped my model into my template, and I don't know why, because I'm still kind of learning myself, is that it sort of reset, it sort of lost the section cut. They're still there. It's just the style sort of turned it off. So I'm fixing that. I'm just basically making sure that my section cut style shows the section cut is on. So if I click here, there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. Okay, I'm happy. The only other thing I need to do is position my perspective a little bit. I mean, I just kind of remember that was a placeholder perspective. So if I wanted a perspective, a really cool perspective looking this way, I would set that to 5.5 foot and set that to camera angle 2 point and say, okay, that's a cool perspective. Perspective 2, update, perspective 1. So again, remember when I said 80-20, I think this is going to help a lot of the process, but it's not going to help everything because ultimately you still have to, I still have to figure out what's going to be a good perspective view for for this particular design. Oh, got a wall. I'm in a wall. I'm in a wall. Okay, what would be a good perspective for this one? Maybe not looking at that giant table in front of you. Maybe something like that. Okay. 5.5 foot. Camera 2-point perspective. And I'm just going to set it like Ron Popeil, set it and forget it. Do you guys know that reference? It's an old school reference. It's quiet. It's too bad the users can't talk in real time, like on Twitch. Can't you hear? Don't people talk when they game?
Yeah, or they have it's more like a text to speech filter. So we could have a computer voice chiming in every now and then with people's comments in the stream. Don't have any questions as of yet. Just people kind of shouting each other out in the comments. As always, there's more of a conversation going on in the live than what we get to respond to here here on screen for you. But
so
people trying to reassure you that we all learn from your mistakes too. So it's all right, Eric.
I fixed it. I say mistake, and it might not even have been me. It may actually have been just a SketchUp just didn't remember some setting. But basically, I forgot that you double check, go back into that SketchUp model. And when you add a model into a template, just double check and make sure everything looks good. All your scenes are set up properly. You can see now I did that. I double checked it. I fixed that style issue where it was missing the section cuts, and there it is. Now, if I pop through these here, you can see that everything is pre-populated. Remember, we set these up with the placeholder model, and now they're all there, which is I think that's pretty cool. Now I want to show you why this is kind of powerful, and then this is the model that I want to detail, but I want to do that one more time. Like I said, I'm going to do that one more time. So I'm going to, let's do that SketchUp template one more time, and we're going to send it to LayOut. This time I'm going to do it with a completely different model. So in this case, what I'm going to do is come in here. Now this is kind of a hideous model I found on 3D Warehouse, so don't shoot the messenger here. I'm going to turn the colors on and say, like, this is why I actually thought it didn't look too bad when it was black and white. It's kind of a cool looking space. So I'm going to take this model. I'm going to grab this model, and I'm going to go pop this into the same model template as before, right? This is our same model template. I can just delete everything that's in there now. If I wanted to, I could purge all the tags out. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to paste. This is our model template, right? Now I'm just going to paste another project that I'm working on. And some people might not want to do this. They might want to say, well, no. I want to keep my working model. But that's okay, because you can actually, while this is pasting, I can say that if you're worried about copying your model into a template model in SketchUp, then you can always save this. You can always, oh, that's not the one. See, learn from our mistakes.
Whoops.
Copy and paste. Let's see if that's the one. You can always save it as a component, right? So if you say, I want to save this as a component, and then I want to reload it, then basically what you're doing is you don't have two different models. You're actually referencing your other model. But that's sort of a story. It's a different story for a different day. So there it is right there. I'm going to line that up. I'm going to put that in my crosshairs. I'm going to double check to make sure that my elevations, yep, they're all still showing. That's perfect. I'm going to resave this as a new model, and I'm going to call this, instead of co-working, I'm going to call this 3D Warehouse Office. I'm going to show you the same thing. The same thing happens. We're going to pop over to Layout. And in fact, I'm going to open up a new one from scratch. File, New, from Template, my live stream template. Pop over here. Now I just have to switch out the reference. So in References, just relink that. Now I'm going to grab my 3D Warehouse Office. And if everything worked okay, then everything has pre-populated. So the perspectives don't really work because I have to reset where the perspectives are taken. So the only thing I would need to do from here is just change the scale. So the nice thing about this is that you can start every project, with at least what you would know as what you would consider your default views. In this case, this scale doesn't work. This is 3/8 inch. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Let's go with 1/8 inch. Nope, maybe too small. Okay. You guys want to know, I want to know some more questions though, because we've got some time to actually, this was not meant to be we're going to create a complete document together. I have that as my campus course. So this was more about looking at tips and tricks, setting keyboard shortcuts, using the modifier key, pre-populating things with AutoText, saving templates both in SketchUp and in LayOut. So we've covered all that already. So the only thing I can think of is sort of the elephant in the room, which is raster versus vector. We can talk about stacking viewports. We can also look at little tips and tricks like laying dimension strings. So from this point on, we're kind of like, we have some flexibility. I'm going to take, while you're thinking about that.
We do have a question.
I'm going to rescale these.
Since you said that.
Yeah.
Can you turn off shadows in LayOut?
Can you turn off shadows in LayOut? Yeah, let me change the scale. What scale do I want to use on this? 3/8 inch? Nope, that one's that's what it was. 1/4 inch? Too big still. 3/16. All right, we're going to go 3/16. Can you turn off shadows? Yes. Shadows by default, it remembers what your scene is saved. So if you have a scene with shadows on in SketchUp and you send it to LayOut, it should remember that. You can override that in here. You can override that under effects. So in your SketchUp model, over here in your SketchUp model window, there's a little drop down called effects. And you can see that shadows can be overridden. If I wanted to turn shadows on, in this case, I'll turn them on just so you can see what I'm talking about. You can actually turn the shadows on, even though my scene in SketchUp did not have them saved. So in this case, I don't want them on because for me, I'm thinking about this more as like a little bit of like a conceptual construction document set. So I'm trying to kind of stick with just the black and white, which is that's just my personal decision on this. Yeah.
Okay, we got another question from YouTube. Is it possible to access entity info within a text block like you can in a callout label?
Entity info within a text block like you can with the callout label. Not sure I really understand that question. And there's no entity info in LayOut like there is in SketchUp. If I'm understanding the question correctly, entity info, just for the viewers that at home, if I selected anything, like if I go into this model, for example, no, I don't want to go into this model because this is really, that's not my model. That's kind of a crappy model that I just downloaded from 3D Warehouse. I want to go into my co-working model. I can speak a little bit smarter about the one that I've worked on myself. Let's just go to a perspective. Okay, let's just so that I have something that I can select that I can speak to. So in this case here, if I have a few different things here, I've given this group a name. I've called this kitchen. So in here, within this group, I have a kitchen instance. And then if I go into that entity info doesn't really tell you that much for objects. If you come into the surface area, if you actually click into the geometry, you can get the information on what material it has on the front face and back face. It can also tell you whether shadows are clicked on, whether it's visible, and what the square footage is for that, or the volume if it's a solid. But in this case, in LayOut, we can reference some of those things in LayOut. So if I'm in LayOut, I can use the label tag, and it's going to pull. It's not pulling from entity info though. That's why I'm kind of a little bit confused. It's pulling from the component definition.
He did follow up with a comment saying used in info blocks about entities for milling or assembly details.
Yeah, well, I'll just give you the short answer. That's way above my pay grade. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Sorry. Maybe somebody in the chat could chime in and I'd be happy to relay the answer for everyone who's in different platforms. I do want to mention here because we're talking about making things a little bit faster, right? So I spent a lot of time on what I call pre-work. We are now at a point where that pre-work, actually getting this model into my layout conceptual set, only took 2 seconds, really, because all I had to do was relink it. I did now all of my cuts and all my pages auto link. Now here though, unfortunately, this is where I said like we're the 80/20 rule. This is where you have to go back in and say, well, actually, this scale is not going to work for this particular design. And so you're going to have to change that scale, and maybe you have to adjust, where that sits on the page. So, but I do want to talk about, in this case, so once a page is done here, I could sort of say, I can choose to turn my guides off. Like once I feel like I've laid out my text and I've got my north arrow and all my call outs and all my stuff here and my dimension strings, let's just throw some dimensions on just for fun. Not Shift D, just D. So one tip for dimensions, if you do one dimension and you want a string from the reception desk to the pool table or whatever, all you have to do is just double click on the pool table. And I don't really like, in this case, I don't really like that level of accuracy. So I'm going to come over here. I didn't already preset this. I probably should have before I saved a template. But in this case, because I'm working on such a big drawing, my precision to 1 inch is perfectly fine. So if I did that again, and I did my dimension, I just wanted to throw some, just so I make it feel like I'm starting to populate my document. 12 foot 1 inch, depends on whether I'm going to the inside or the outside of. So that's what somebody had said earlier. They said, well, how do I snap to something? Well, sometimes, like in this case, I have a wood facade. So I have the wood desk and then it has this trim piece. So I could actually snap to either one of those. You may actually need to get in a little bit close, get your dimension tool, and I'm snapping to my SketchUp model here. And so you can see I'm either snapping to the outside of the trim or I'm snapping to the inside of the desk. So that's up to you. You just got to kind of zoom in. So now let's do that dimension string again really quick. I want to grab to this pool table just to see what my clearance is. 13 feet, that looks great. Double click, I'm double clicking on my mouse. I want to see what the clearance is between the pool table and the kitchen table, just for fun. There it is. And then I want to know how big the kitchen table is. And lastly, maybe the distance between the kitchen table and the end wall. So there you go. So that was a little tip about just dimensions. I did want to say though that it's a little bit funny. I don't know if I like it or not, but I think I do, but it's confusing sometimes, is that you can toggle layers on and off and the pages remember those settings. For example, I've turned my guides off. Let's just say I'm done with this. Let's just say that I'm done with, let me just maybe shift this up so it's centered a little bit better on the page. Let's just say I'm done with this page, right? I mean, I know it's not done, but you just bear with me. So I've turned my guides off. This one's good. Now I'm ready to get, print it and get it approved or whatever. Now, if I go to my page that I'm still working on, you'll notice, oh, I don't need my dock on. Okay. You'll notice that the guides are still there. So it remembers that I turned them off on this page. So, and they're still on this page. So in this case, I just want to point that out if somebody didn't know that already. So I'm going to go set the scale on this one. If you did work on projects that had the same, if you knew you were working on a single family house, and for the most part, they fit at this scale, at this sheet size, you could preset that scale. You wouldn't have to change it the way I am doing right now. But I work on different size projects. So, yeah.
Have another question from YouTube for you if you're ready for one.
Yeah, keep them coming, because all I'm doing now is just looking at, we're going to just look at some little tips and tricks, and we're going to kind of, for the next 15 minutes, and we'll probably wrap up a little early today.
Yeah, the question is, sometimes when I switch viewports, the screen doesn't update what I'm seeing, but the viewport name is changed when I check. Is this something that I'm doing?
So read that. So I have to hear it twice so I can, because I'm thinking, and then I have to hear it again so I can answer.
Okay. Sometimes when I switch viewports, the screen doesn't update what I'm seeing, but the viewport name has changed when I check. Is this something that I'm doing?
It could be that there's this thing called render model. So by default, there should be a little, I'm not sure. It's been a while. I don't use this feature. That's a good question. But basically, let me see if that's it. So depending on whether you're, say, render model or not, let's change this one. That one changed. Okay, so that's not it. There is a way to turn off, and maybe is Aaron or Tyson on the call? Maybe that's it. Okay, there is this, nope, that's updating the actual SketchUp model itself. There used to be this little thing here. Let me check my document setup here. My reference. Relink, unlink, go to, purge. No, I don't know. I don't know. I know what you're talking about though. And it used to be this little, you can say whether you wanted your model to update or not. You can render it. So that way, if you keep making changes to your SketchUp model and you go back and forth, you can say, don't render it yet in layout. But when I'm here looking at this right here, it says render model. It's only giving me that option. It doesn't, oh, let's see, render mode. Nope, it's not there. There should be a setting that I don't use that basically allows you to turn off rendering the viewport. And I think that might be what's causing the problem, because what you're doing then is you're basically saying, I'm on auto render. Maybe it's this one right here. I'm stupid. It does say auto next to render. I'm going to turn that off. Do you see what I'm pointing at? Where it says auto? I'm going to turn that off, and then I'm going to switch elevations. There you go. That was it. That was what I was trying to say. I just spent a long time saying that I knew the answer, but I didn't know where they put the button for that. It's right here. It depends. I think the problem is whether or not you have auto render on or not. And the reason to use this is because there's a reason to do that, is because if someone's making, so let's say someone's working in the SketchUp model and you're working in the layout model and they're making constant changes or saving it constantly, it's going to keep pushing it to re-render in layout. And that might cause even just a little bit of performance. So you may choose to turn that off. That way it only renders when you want it to. If I click it again, you can see it should change. There, it changed. Back now we're on elevation B. Yep. Right? It changed.
Tyson chimed in and said, yeah, right? That little refresh icon. If you have a scene, you can change the view of that scene and then it will stay on that new view, even if you pick a different scene.
Yeah, so in this case, I didn't want B. Yeah, that little refresh icon, I wanted to keep this my elevation A.
And the feedback came back and said, brilliant. I must be checking on that and off. I must be checking that on and off without realizing it. So
yeah,
you solved somebody's problem today, Eric. Good job.
Now, see, I'm going to use my shortcut, which is Shift Z. So I'm zooming in just to the area that I want to work. And I want to share with you one thing. I'm working in 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. I need some people. Now, I didn't put any people in my SketchUp model. That's okay. I actually like to be able to control them here in layout. So this would be a great opportunity to go back into Scrapbook one more time and find some people. I kind of like the translucent people. Now here's the funny thing. We don't have a person for 1/4 inch. So we have one for, SketchUp gives you just a few to work with, but they didn't give you, like in this case, I want a transparent. This is Sandra, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this Sandra? And who else do I want? I know Aiden's in there. I'll take this guy. Who's this? That's not Josh, is it? I don't know who that is. Okay, so you can see these people are out of scale. So let me share with you another little tip. If you have an object that is the wrong scale, you can just use your Make Scaled Drawing, your scaled drawing tool. So I know that these are 1/2 inch equals 1 foot scale, which is why they don't fit my viewport. Because if I pop back over to my viewport, I know my viewport is 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, right? So if I take these two people and I say Make Scaled Drawing, it's going to let me choose a scale for them. So I have to choose the scale that they are, which is didn't I say 1/4 inch? No, 1/2 inch. Where's 1/2 inch equals 1 foot? There it is. That's the scale that they should be. So what's cool about this is now that they're a scaled drawing, I can actually just change the scale. So if I wanted to do 3/8 inch, look what happens. They shrink down and they are, but that's not the size of my model. I think I'm 1/4 inch. I think that, yeah, there you go. So now you could have scaled them. You could say, oh, I'll scale them in half. But the cool thing about making a scaled drawing of objects is that if you have different scales on different pages, all you have to do is grab that object or that annotation or that person, that entourage, come back in over here and you can change the scale, and then you know that they're correct. You're not just coming in here and then using the scale tool and then just saying, oh, I hope that this is, the size that they're supposed to be. Whoa, see, messed it up. That's a little tip there. That's a little efficiency tip. What are the things from the group? We've got a little bit of time left. I can talk about raster versus vector. I did do a skill builder not too long ago on why you shouldn't be too concerned with it. I can reiterate a few of those points. I also did a skill builder recently on stacking viewports, which is a great tool um, to control transparencies. And I learned something. I was talking to Tyson yesterday and I thought I saw something that looked like an error. And I said, why is it doing this? And Tyson says, I don't know. And I said, I've never seen this before. And I'll give you an example. And I don't know if this is helpful or not. And I'm kind of curious. I've never seen this before, never done this before. I think it's awesome. I think it could be awesome. I'm kind of curious as what our audience thinks. So let me give you an example of where I think maybe spending the next 10 minutes could be. Now, I've purposefully turned
We do have a suggestion from the comments if you want one.
Why don't you give me one? And then if it's better than what I'm doing, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but it's a fun one, and I want to put this idea out into the world because it hasn't been shared ever yet before. But go ahead.
All right. So please, raster versus vector.
Raster versus vector. Okay, that probably would be more important. I probably should do that first. Okay, so folks, let's talk about raster versus vector for a few minutes because that's kind of what whenever you hear anyone that's kind of hating on layout, it reminds me of, if you know who Miranda Sings is. She says, haters back off. That's kind of what I say when people are like hating on layout, because it's like, dude, layout's awesome, by the way. I think this is what a lot of people are saying. So I'll give you an example. In my SketchUp model here, I've got some furnishings that I've laid out. And for those that joined us on that live stream, for those that joined me on my live stream, there we go. What you're gonna remember that when I laid out my SketchUp model originally, I laid them out with CAD blocks because I was space planning in 2D. The nice thing about this is that you could either do your space planning in CAD and bring it in, or you can bring your CAD blocks in. So I space planned everything that I knew was an off-the-shelf component in 2D. And anything that was custom, I built from scratch. So like these things are built from scratch. The reason why I'm saying that is because when I laid out my furnishings, I went in and I went into my 2D block. I'm going to change it to perspective so you can see this a little bit better. And I placed a 3D component inside of that 2D block, right? So inside of my couch component, I have a 3D couch and a 2D. If I switch to my color by tag working style and I turn my floor off, that's not my floor. If I turn my, what's one is this one coming in from? Oh, I don't want to do that. Okay, I know why. Okay, you get it. You can see it's Z fighting right now, but you can see that the blue is my 2D and the green is my 3D. So the reason why I did that here is, let me show you when I pop into plan view, because this is important. This is the background. If I turn my 3D couch on and I turn my hidden geometry on, which is my J shortcut, you can see that these little ottomans or poofs and these little chairs, like, I pick stuff that's relatively well optimized. I already pre-screen it before I bring it into my model. But even this couch right here, it's a lot. You know, look at the geometry on to get the curves on the end. It's probably higher, more geometry than I actually need for this particular couch. But that's the one I chose. I picked from 3D Warehouse. So if I'm in layout and I have my 3D stuff, what it's going to do is when I switch to vector, it's going to try to render every single one of those lines, even the hidden ones. It's going to render all the faces and all the edges because SketchUp's a surface modeler. So in this case, it actually makes more sense for me. I'm going to come over here to my tags because I shouldn't have had my 3D furniture on. Those two I've turned off. So you can see if I turn off my 3D furniture, I have just my 2D CAD blocks, which are embedded in the 3D furniture. So if I move something, it'll move in tandem. But now I'm more than happy to switch to, instead of vector, I'm going to go to hybrid, and I'll show you why. There's two reasons why. Let me show you the difference between vector and hybrid. Hybrid still shows materials. So even if I'm doing a materials override and it's white, so I have white paper, I'll give you an example. If I change the paper, I'll change the paper for this. Okay, I'll change the paper just briefly for this. You can see what's happening is that even though I'm overriding the materials with white, it's still reading in my SketchUp model as a material. So if I switch this to pure vector, you can see that's gone. So vector is great for stacking viewports because you won't have any materials. If I stacked a vector line on top of something else, you can see that it's going to get rid of any materials in the model. It's only those vector edges. In this case, what I might want to do though, if I switch to hybrid, what you're going to do is you're going to preserve those materials. So whether you're overriding them like me in the white mode, or whether you're going to keep your textures and your wood grain and all that stuff. And then when I zoom in, and you can see the difference here. If I zoom in really close, I've got these really nice, clean vector lines, but I'm keeping my materials because I'm in hybrid mode. Now, if I go back to raster, just for comparison, you can see the difference. It pixelates a little bit. But let me tell you something is, first of all, the pixelation looks the worst on round objects, because obviously a line, even if you pixelate a straight line, you really can't tell the difference. But this is a preview mode. If I go and export this page right now, I will do that just because this is what my skill builder covered, but it's kind of important because we've got a wider audience today. I'm going to go ahead and export this page to my desktop. PDF, I only want to do page 2 because I just want to do one page for right now. I want to put my output resolution to high, and I want to push my quality all the way up. And I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK, and I'm only exporting the plan. I want to show you what a raster in plan looks like, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to switch over to hybrid. I'm going to try and go quick, and I'm going to go export, desktop. I'm going to call this hybrid, and I'm going to do the same thing. I just want to make sure I'm exporting only page 2 and click OK. Let's open those up. And my desktop. Let's open those up.
So we did get a comment from somebody in YouTube saying vector isn't transparent for me.
Vector is not transparent for you. That's interesting. I couldn't tell you why. But I'll say this, if anyone that's commenting on YouTube or LinkedIn or anything, go to forums.sketchup.com. I think that's or the community. We'll post the link in the chat. But go to our SketchUp forum, and if you have a problem or something's not working the way I'm showing you, post it there and we'll respond. That's the best way to get feedback. It's really difficult to solve a complex problem through a YouTube comment. So let's zoom in. This is my hybrid really quick. I'm going to zoom in all the way to here. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to find kind of a curved object. So this is my hybrid one. I'm going to zoom way in. You can see that's vector, so I've got nice clean lines. Now this is my raster one. I'm going to zoom way in. Now remember what you guys said, it's not until I get to, how far is my zoom? Sorry, I don't want that open. So yes, you can see that pixelation a little bit, but remember I'm zoomed like 600%. I'm zoomed like 800%. So if I put these two up next to each other, you can see a little bit of a difference. But remember, I'm anything you zoom into, you take a picture, a photograph, and you zoom in 800%, you're going to get that pixelation. The question isn't quality for me. The question is whether you want these vector edges to be editable. If you're exporting to CAD or if you're exporting to Illustrator, you might need to preserve that vector editability. But if you're exporting to print, you're never going to view this at 800%. So in this case, I would say stay in raster. Now, the second thing that I said, I just wanted to point that out, is that when you zoom out, even just to like here, you cannot tell the difference. You will not be able to tell the difference. And try printing it. Test me. Try printing it. Tell me what you think. No, I don't want to do that. So that's Megascan's bridge, in case you were wondering what that was. So, but more importantly, if you do what I'm doing here, which is working in, when you do your plan views, if you're working in symbols that are simplified and you don't have these 100,000 polygon couches, then vector will not have any problem. You'll notice I have zero problem zooming. I have zero problem adjusting my viewport. I have zero problem annotating or adding comments or stacking viewports. So even here now, because I have I've sort of optimized my SketchUp model, I can stay in vector for the entire time that I want to. The only time you're going to get in trouble is when you have this really, really, really extremely detailed 3D warehouse stuff, and you're trying to you want to render all those edges in vector.
Matt chimed in and saying, I like to view prints with my eyeball pressed to the page.
Well, I'm going to say, Matt, I don't believe you. I'm going to say that you're just messing with me. And you know what? I take every comment seriously, so I'm totally thrown off now. So, Matt, I don't know what to do now. I wanted to share that trick though, that one thing. I hope that helps a little bit. I hope that helps a little bit. The other thing you could do is if you're like me, you may want to just work in Raster. Like when I set my template up, I set it up in Raster. In Raster or at least hybrid is kind of what you want to be thinking about working in, because if you have materials, you will not get the materials if you go full vector. You also cannot get shadows in full vector. So for me, working in Raster makes a lot of sense. Now, if for some reason, again, I knew that I was exporting this to InDesign, or I was exporting it to Illustrator or something like that, or I needed to go to CAD, remember, it looks more pixelated than it really is. When I go to export this, it's going to look better than it does here. But if I wanted to, if I really wanted to, I could select this viewport, and when I'm ready to export, like after I'm all done with everything, I've already laid out my call outs and my tags and my dimensions, and then just come over here and pop in at the end. And it's just gonna take a second because you can see I've got a bunch of high poly entourage. So you can see I'm gonna go to hybrid mode, and you can see it's gonna take just a little second to update. So that little
Got
delay,
a question in
that little
coming
delay
from
there,
LinkedIn.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk
No,
over
it's
you
okay.
there. But from LinkedIn, someone's asking, would you recommend doing a lighting plan in layout or in the model? Where would one get lighting symbols from Scrapbook?
Lighting symbols. A lighting plan can be done if you do not have. Let's go. Let's open up my scrapbook. I don't keep them open all the time. I should probably. They just give you some basic stuff to start with: cars, people, trees, right? And then stuff that you could add to your title block. So column grids and site graphics, north arrows. So it's pretty cool that they give you a lot of this stuff to work with. But ultimately, you could just create your own. You would just create your own symbols and save it to a scrapbook. I would do anything that's documentation, anything with symbols, anything with text, anything with labels should always be done in layout, not in SketchUp. There you go. This is in hybrid now. It did take a second for it to update. So again, if that was a problem for me, I would just wait until I'm ready to export my PDF. I would just spend a couple minutes. I would switch those to vector, and I would not do that at the very beginning. I would just do that at the end when I'm ready to export. So I hope that helps. I don't want to say put that argument to bed, because I know that everyone's projects are different. Everyone's needs are different. And other people will say, no, my performance is still not what I want it to be. So all I can say is that, there are some things that we can do about it. It's really just, again, trying to be smart about how we set our model up. I want to wrap up because we're at our time, and I don't know if this is even worth going into, but I had an idea. I kind of want to show you one thing, because this is the thing that kind of blew my mind, and maybe it's just me, and then I want to close out. Now, I was thinking about a way, like if I wanted to put a hatch pattern on this floor so that I could create a materials legend. I was like, how would I do that? Because you might sit there and say, well, you could come in here with your pen tool and trace this. Right? You can, I don't know if it's showing up. If I go line tool, maybe a fat stroke, you could just come over here and trace this all around. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, that wouldn't work because you've got just too many little edges. And then I thought about it another way. Well, what if, and for the sake of this, I'm just going to create a blank page and stay with me, because I might be onto something. So in here, you can also tag override. Another way of working smart and fast in layout here, and this is a good segue, is that you can override tags here in layout. So you don't have to set up 50,000 scenes for everything that you want. You can just copy the plan scene. And in this case, I want to show it without furnishings. So I'm going to turn off my furnishings. And in this case, let's see, what else do I want to turn off? Turn that off. And I want to turn off my walls. So I want this, in this case, I want to just maybe I want to do an area calc or something of just this floor. So this is my floor now. So if I wanted to do a hatch pattern, I thought, okay, how might I do this? Well, SketchUp Layout's also got this really cool thing that you can take information from SketchUp into Layout by exploding it. Now, if you do that, that live link between the two is gone. And I swear this is the last thing I'm going to do. But if I explode this and then ungroup it, you can see now that I have live line work. I have, you would want to, excuse me, I'm going to go back before I do that. before you explode it, you want to make it vector or hybrid. And I'll tell you why, because when you explode it, you want those lines to be in the model. So there you go, watch. The reason why I was trying to do that was because I was like, well, how can I create an area of this floor so that I could hatch it separately from the rest of the way my model looks? So the only issue with that is that when you explode line work here, you can see that my floor line work did not remain joined. So in this case, it would take just a couple of seconds, 30 seconds or so, to rejoin that. And once you've joined all of these, this is with my glue. I wish I could just select everything and merge them together like the weld tool does. I don't know if you could do that. So once you've joined them, you can, and I'm not going to do the whole thing, you can then apply a hatch pattern to it. Window, pattern fill, I'm going to apply. It doesn't matter. At this point, I'm just going to do this one. So if I say pattern on and this pattern there, that one. Okay, so you can see that if I trace this or bring the geometry in from SketchUp, I can now have a hatch pattern that I can layer into my viewport. But I want to show you this one thing because it was kind of interesting. I want to see what other people think about it. If I go into, everyone knows in SketchUp, we have color by tag. I'm in color by tag mode right now. It's basically where I'm overriding all the colors and I can see this in color by tag. Well, if you go to hidden line style in color by tag, it overrides the colors. But I found out this little trick that in case I wanted to come over here and turn off, I'm just going to turn off my furnishings and stuff like that. What I want is just my floor. I want just my floor. Maybe I'll just leave my walls on for right now. You can actually click your floor group, and for the material, I'm going to use this material. Watch this. So if I explode this and make it a material, then I can now assign this material to my floor group. So where's that material? It should be the last material I put in. I can drag this. If you're on Windows, if you watched my recent skill builder or beyond, which is Level Up SketchUp, you'll probably say, oh, you can't drag and drop like you can. Yes, because the materials browser is different in Windows. You have to path to it. So I'm going to click OK. And look what happens. I don't know if anyone, I want to hear from the people from the comments. You can see what I'm doing here. I have my color by tag on. So I'm overriding my wood grain texture with a CAD diagrammatic texture. So I'm going from a realistic material to a diagrammatic material in my model, which I thought was pretty cool. So if I saved that, oh, I'm in the wrong model here. Okay, well, it's okay. So if I link this in here, let me pop over to my layout document. Over here, and then we'll wrap up, and then I'll wrap up with you guys. Let me pop that model in. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. That was in my co-working model. There it is. Now, right now, you can see I'm in my color by tag style, but if I come over here, which scene do I want? This is where it's like, this is where you have to practice. You know, it's like so many things. I want that and that, update. Save. Reload.
People are chiming in and saying that is so cool. Never seen that before. Never saw that. Pretty cool indeed.
All right. I just want to finish. Sorry, when I get an idea in my head, I just want to finish it. So I thank you for everyone. I know we're right at our time, and I just wanted to put this out into the world because I think it's related to what we're doing when I'm talking about efficiency. The point I was trying to make is that if you're trying to add hatch patterns to your SketchUp model, you could draw them in layout, you could copy and paste them, you could stack viewports, or you can do what I just figured out, which is that you can combine two different styles in SketchUp together. And by two different styles, I mean that I'm in hidden line and color by tag at the same time. So in which case I can now override any of the materials that are in my model with diagrammatic materials that then can translate. And what's cool about that is that, again, if you change something in your SketchUp model, it'll automatically change. You don't have to go in and remove that boundary. So I think this, to be honest with you, I just figured this out. I think this could be a game changer in my workflow. I would love to hear from you all. And I think at this point, I'm going to just wrap up by saying, what did we cover here today? Let's go to my big screen. I'm going to go big screen. Oh, no, I don't want to go big screen yet. What did we cover today here? We talked about AutoText. We talked about shortcuts. We talked about using guides. We also talked about putting things on multiple pages by using the put on every page. So that way you only have to draw it once. Like in this case, I only drew these guides once. And then when you go to the next page, you can see because it's on every page, it shows up on every single page. So that's the one thing we did. We also talked about setting up in your SketchUp model using a template. Using a template that has all your scenes, all your elevations and scenes set up, so that all you have to do is drop a model into your SketchUp template, save that file, and then back in LayOut, it's as easy as right-clicking and saying relink model reference. So you just relink to that model. And then there you go. Every single page will auto-populate, will repopulate, right? So hopefully that's helpful. And then lastly, my last little trick, before lastly is knowing the difference between when to use vector and when to use raster. And of course, lastly is that you can combine two different styles so that if you want to show it both in photorealism or material realism, like realistic materials, and show it in diagrammatic, like doing a materials legend or like in CAD hatches, you actually can do that using the color by tag material override feature in SketchUp. That way that live link is preserved and it's completely automated. You want to change the material, swap it, everything changes. So I'm going to switch over to my big screen. Whoa. I jumped the gun. That was not the big screen that I was supposed to do. So I'm just going to say thank you. I'm going to let Donovan say thank you as well. I didn't mean to cut you off. Donovan, before I press that button one more time, can you help get us home?
Yep. I just want to join the chorus of comments coming in from YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn of people saying how great this session was, how much they learned. We had a request to get you cloned so you could do individual teaching sessions. On that note, just as a reminder for everybody, we have SketchUp Campus. They are college level courses where you can learn all things SketchUp, all things layout from the man himself, Eric, as you've seen here today. So if you want more educational material for your SketchUp journey, definitely head over to learn.sketchup.com.
Yes, and if you don't, until then, if you can't wait till the next live stream for next week, which I'll plug, Tyson hopefully will be going next week. I don't know what he's doing. If I knew what he was doing, I would plug him, but you're just going to have to come back and check it out. Every Friday we do this at noon Mountain Time. So make sure to check us out on all three of us, Aaron, Tyson, and myself on live streams. We alternate, we take turns. It's good to hear from different people and different voices. But like I said, in the meantime, we have two video series. We have two new series coming out, which is we call Level Up SketchUp, which is getting your native tools, all the cool things that maybe you did or didn't know about native tools in SketchUp, and a new series every Thursday called Beyond Desktop. That's where we look at things like rendering and extensions and layout, the stuff that we all love and work with, but it's not necessarily SketchUp native specific. So my headphones just warned me that they're about to die, which is perfect because that's like the Oscars cane, when they turn the Oscars music on that says wrap it up, Eric.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say thank you.
You're being played off the stage.
I'm being played off the stage by Apple AirPods Pro. So everyone, thank you so much. This was a great session. I know we bounced around a lot, but we covered some really great things and couldn't do it without you all participating. Thank you on that. Now I'm ready to cue my music. See you next time.